round things out with our first official live mock draft. So, Tyler, if you want to pull that up on the screen here, I'll kind of give the people the rundown. But
Perfect.
we're going to be doing a 12-person mock draft. 10 of them don't exist, so we're just going to do bots so that Tyler and I can kind of control it. But we're doing one kind of matching our home league, which by the skin of our teeth made it to a half PPR from standard this year. We're also doing 2 flex. It's a 1 quarterback league, so it's going to be 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and then 2 flex and 1 tight end. So we're going to run through a draft of that. We'll try to kind of give you some analysis as we go here, but we'll keep it, relatively short as we go. So as our actual draft order just got decided, shout out to a celebrity Royal Rumble video game.
Mm-hmm.
I have the 4th pick this year, and Tyler went with the 7th. So really quick before we start, any thoughts on like the 7th pick overall, or like the middle range, or do you have any kind of strategies coming in when you're in the middle of the draft?
It's the main nice thing about being in the middle of the draft is you don't feel like you have to reach on individuals as often, simply because it feels like you're picking all the time. I'm not a huge fan of the middle. I would certainly rather be at the tail ends, just because, again, I'm more willing to jump and go get my guy. So sometimes in the middle, I this is me personally just having to change my own thought process, but then I still sometimes have to reach. But when you're in the middle, you usually don't miss out on a run of something. If somebody starts runs on tight ends or whatever, you can usually get that because you're in the middle of the draft. I literally had the second to last choice, so I could have either chosen spot 7 or spot 9. And my thought process was after about pick 8 was when those really top tier guys that I wanted to make sure I had on my team, one of them, start to fall off. And then it really goes into really more so receivers than maybe running backs. So I ended up with the 7 spot versus the 9 spot.
I like it. I went with the 4th. I had the 4th overall pick, and shockingly, the first 3 went the top 3. So, my thoughts this year, and again, subject to ADP changing, but my thoughts this year are there are very clear top 5. Again, assuming 1 quarterback leagues. So, if I can get one of those top 5 picks, I'm actually okay with 3, 4, or 5 because the decision kind of gets made for me earlier on, and you just get a better value on the back end coming around. So, I really like those spots. I think the first round is very much separated into picks 1 through 5, picks 6 through 8, kind of like you talked about where that cutoff is, and then 9 through 12, which honestly, like the 9th through the 15th player I could see going in the first round. So it's kind of like if you don't have that, I guess I would just go later. Like if I don't have 4 or 5, then I would prefer 6, 7, 8. And if I don't have those, give me 11 or 12, so at least I can double up and see what happens from there. So I'm feeling very good with 4. I'll miss out on probably like the likely top 2, but then it's kind of just a toss-up from there, and I can really go either way with running back or receiver coming back. So we'll see how this goes, and I'll just try to like quickly read off, since we don't have a time limit. I'll read off like who was taken in between our picks, and then whoever's on the clock can take it away. Here we go. So pick 1. Jefferson goes first, as everybody expected. CMC is second, who I think is the right call for the number 2. Again, we're doing a half PPR here. Austin Eckler goes 3, which I think is kind of the toss-up of whether Eckler or Jamar Chase goes 3. I'm here at 4, and I basically have the option that I expect between choosing Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp. I'm very torn on that, so I'm going to kind of like let the offseason progress on who I want to go with. I think for me, Kupp definitely has more of the upside because we all remember him just being elite to start off this past season, and he was the wide receiver 1 overall 2 years ago. So I think for him, it's just whether or not, you feel safe on the injury, and he is a little bit older. Jamar Chase is far more athletic, but he's got more target share to deal with between T. Higgins, and then they've got a good run game, so to speak, but also better quarterback. So it's kind of just, whether you're going safety or upside, so to speak. In this mock draft, long story short, I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp just because I love the upside a little bit more, and I want to see what my team looks like from there. So Jamar Chase obviously goes right after, and then Tyreek Hill, who I do think is like the clear next wide receiver off the board, goes at 6. So Tyler is left on the board with kind of some options of Kelsey, a couple of running backs, the next receiver. So
yeah, and this is where when you're in the 7 slot, you essentially get to decide how the rest of your draft is going to go. You can go positional advantage and do somebody like Travis Kelsey, and potentially in a full PPR league, that might be the route I go because that's a massive positional advantage. But us in a half PPR league, I still think it lends more toward a standard league than it does a full PPR league. But on top of that, we also have somebody there in my boy, Mr. Bijan Robinson, who also has hands for days. So he's not only going to get 250 touches out of the backfield, he's going to get 50 receptions as well. So I think he's going to close that gap pretty quickly. So in the 7th round, it's funny enough, Jack, this is literally exactly how we talked about this draft might go
Yep.
in the exact order. So I'm going to take my boy, and I'm taking Bijan.
You're not wearing a Kelsey jersey, so I mean,
I'm not wearing a Kelsey jersey. That is right.
I do think that that's the nice part is you can go very much. It's like it's Kelsey, it's Bijan, or it's your favorite receiver. So going off of that, we have Diggs. Kelsey finally goes at 9. Barkley and Jonathan Taylor go 10, 11. I think Taylor will continue to fall like we talked about. Then we got CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Adams at the bookends. First quarterback off the board with Pat Mahomes at the 202. Then we kind of alternate here with A.J. Brown, Nick Chubb, Garrett Wilson. So a little bit of everything off the board. You do have pretty even options at running back and wide receiver of what you want to do here.
Yeah, this would be if this is how it fell. This would actually be kind of tough for me. I think in a situation like this, in our real draft, I don't know that Derrick Henry falls this far. I feel like somebody will take him. Just knowing our personal league, we've played standard for so long, and for context, this is our 15th year, by the way, which is crazy. We tend to prioritize running back a lot more than wide receiver. Maybe that changes with a half-point PPR. I doubt that, though. So my guess is I am more so have the Amon-Ra St. Brown's here, the Jalen Waddles of the world. So if this were the case, I think I would – this is actually a really tough one for me.
Yeah, those two is a tough decision.
Those two is a tough one. But I texted Jack late last night, and I said, if I can start our draft, once again, this is crazy. If I can start Bijan and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I am doing it 100% of the time. So I'm a man of my word, and I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown.
It's just nice because it gives you the flexibility versus going running back, and feeling like you have to go wide receiver next. So out of curiosity, because Josh Jacobs was also on the board, I know Derrick Henry, I would take him over Jacobs. But if Jacobs had signed his franchise tag by now, do you consider him over Derrick Henry at all at that spot? Or do you put him above Amon-Ra even?
I do. I think Josh Jacobs, if he is there, we saw the type of workload that he can get and the plays. And if you go back and look at the tape, he looked incredible on tape. So I think if he signs that tender, there's no chance that he gets to the middle of the 2nd round. I think that certainly pushes him away from the draft board. Obviously, he fell because of the concerns and the continued concerns. But if Josh Jacobs is there and I can go Bijan, Josh Jacobs, I think that's a risk I would certainly be willing to take.
Yeah. So after that, after Tyler takes Amon-Ra, second quarterback goes off the board, and Josh Allen, and Derrick Henry almost fell to me at 204. I would have cried.
Crazy.
That would have been insane. That would have felt like a dynasty team of like going all in for it right now, and I'm going to implode in 2 years with Cup and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, you got 2 30-year-olds.
Yeah. So this is kind of the point that I really am praying doesn't happen to me in our real draft. Again, like you said, we expect Derrick Henry to go earlier, so maybe one of these other guys bounces down. Garrett Wilson I could see falling, like with the questionable injury news. Really nobody else. So I might be staring down the barrel of a gun deciding whether I go like probably second quarterback off the board or like the 2 running backs available, right? The 3 running backs. Josh Jacobs doesn't have his contract or his franchise tender signed. Breece Hall is coming back from injury and might have Dalvin Cook showing up. And then Tony Pollard, who I genuinely really, really love. It's deciding whether or not to take him over Josh Jacobs is the tough part for me. I did start running a receiver early, so it'd be nice to go running back here, but I'm not tied to it. So of all the receivers available, by far I have Jalen Waddle over T. Higgins, who's the next one down. So Jalen Waddle I love, like I talked about earlier. If I take him, I have the chance to go Tua later, which would be kind of cool. I don't know that I feel like Jalen Waddle, I know he finished pretty high last year. I think he was still a wide receiver 1, maybe like 7 or 8. So I know he has that potential. I don't feel like he's a true number 1 though. So that's the only problem for me. Whereas if I get Pollard or Jacobs, kind of like that running back drop off, like you talked about, it feels a little bit safer just to at least get one of those guys before the not really number 1 options start to show up here. So I think I am settled in to running back just because I got Cup early, and based on the Josh Jacobs news, it's not enough to make me think that he won't start week 1, but it's enough where if there's another guy even close to him, where I do have Pollard like just 1 spot behind, it's enough for me to make me go that way. So I am going to go Tony Pollard and just kind of see how I feel in the draft. I don't know that I would love that in real life, but you see a quick running back run with Derrick Henry, then I take Pollard. Ramondre goes next, then Josh Jacobs. The third quarterback goes off the board at Jalen Hurts. Oh, Jalen Waddle goes, who I expected. I was planning on taking Chris Olave with my third because he was a
Yeah.
little bit lower in ADP. So I'm very, very sad that he didn't make it back because I am obsessed with him. I would have made him my guy at wide receiver if I didn't love Hollywood so much. So if I could get Chris Olave at the 304, which ADP wise suggests he'll be there. The only problem is I know Jordan loves him, who
Yes.
was the guy right before me. So I would have to take him at the 209 to basically get him. That would be my ideal start. If I could get Cup, a solid running back, and Chris Olave as my two, I'd be in love. Reacting real time here, I just saw you got taken mid sentence and I got sad. So Mark Andrews goes 203 or 303. I probably wouldn't have considered him there. I do love Mark Andrews as like a mid third pick. So if you're in that like middle range, or even if he slips to like 3.9, 3.10, I really, really like that value because you can get one of each position earlier. But that doesn't hurt me as much. So now I'm basically left with Brees Hall once again, who feels better at the 304. I'm still very, very concerned. I just don't know that I love it. And I would like a little bit more of like a sure thing behind Tony Pollard versus Brees, who he might be a great late season guy, but I want a guy that's going to be getting all the touches. I don't want any competition. I'm still not in on T. Higgins. Devontae Smith, I actually might take above T potentially. Like I think it's kind of a coin flip depending on who you like more, but those are kind of the ones that I'm looking at here. You could reach for Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. I'm not going to do that at the 4 overall pick just because it's a little early for me. Not in love with any other receivers here. So I think for me, it's a teardrop at running back where you've got the Jameer Gibbs and Kenneth Walker's coming up. ETN, we talked about our concerns, even though he's got a lot of potential. I do love him, but another guy that I think is criminally underrated this year is who I'm going to go with in Najee Harris at the 304. Just an absurd bell cow guy. Another dude that gets 270 to 300 touches every single year. And I think he's better than people give him credit for. So being my RB2 and in the third round, I feel very, very safe with the Pollard Najee combo. Really quick here, Lamar Jackson goes next, fourth quarterback off the board, and then Brees Hall finally goes 306. That probably feels good for him. I mean, depending on when Dalvin Cook signs, but now we got Tyler back up.
Yeah, I was hoping Brees was going to fall to me with the safety of Bijan and St. Brown. I think with the way I started there, I think those two are kind of guaranteed their production. So I would have been willing to take the risk on Brees right there as a mid third because I think they'll still be okay, and obviously he's still going to get the work. So I was hoping he fell to me. I'm kind of with you, Jack. I'm not a big T. Higgins believer. I've had him in a few leagues, but I just think that competition there is definitely tough. So obviously better as your wide receiver 2 than your wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith obviously showed exactly what he can be. He's an absolute monster in one of the best offenses in the NFL. Travis Etienne was literally my guy who said he could finish so many different ways. Devonta and T are above DK for me. So quarterback, I don't think I could go Burrow right away. Gibbs, I could see being incredibly valuable here for me.
Rookie running backs.
I know, right? So I could just go rookie, and the tough part about that is then I'd have 2 Lions, then I'd have St. Brown, and I'd have
That's true.
Amir,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what gets me out on that. Otherwise, I'd like it as well. And we both talked about how pretty out I'm Kenneth Walker myself, so I'm going to go with being very satisfied with a Devonta Smith for my wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I also feel better now, like seeing the running backs. It really falls off after the 2-3 turn with Najee.
Yes.
I feel like I don't feel great about a lot of these guys. Would you have taken Brees Hall over any of the other running backs in front of him? Like, would you put him above them drafting wise?
I don't think so. I'm taking Chubb, Henry Pollard, Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, and Najee over Brees simply because of the potential for Dalvin and whatnot, and bringing them along slowly. The guaranteed production in my eyes from the Ramondres and the Najees outweigh that for Brees for me.
Fair. After Tyler's pick at Devontae, we had Debo finally go, like Tyler talked about before. Joe Burrow next, Jameer Gibbs and ETN round off the running backs. Then we had a little stretch here of receivers with T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, and Keenan Allen. Great value in the early 4th for Keenan. So if you got one of those back-end picks, I'm a big fan of him. Another guy I'm huge on, but probably no chance I'm going to be able to get him this year with my picks. But Joe Mixon, super, super high on because he's got kind of like a last ride in Cincinnati, and they're going to score a lot. Amari Cooper goes next, and then Aaron Jones. Not sure how you feel about him or any of the guys in front of you, ones that you were hoping to fall to you.
I didn't figure it was going to happen. I obviously would have loved somebody like a Keenan Allen in a half point PPR league to fall to me. Again, didn't think Jameer was going to fall back to me, but I would have certainly considered that as well. Mixon was a big one. If I can get Mixon in the fourth, I think he again just has that guaranteed work, and he obviously took the pay cut to stay in Cincinnati, and that's an amazing offense. So if I could have gotten Bijan, Mixon, St. Brown, and Devonta, I would have loved
Yeah.
that start, but such is life. So on to the next. It would be really nice to get a running back here. And if I flip over to my tab here, I'm looking at the Kenneth Walker, J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanderses of the world. I'm trying to decide if one of them would fall back to me. My guess is likely not. That's kind of the route that I want to go. Of those three, I'm with Jack. I think Miles Sanders has the best to return above and beyond ADP value there. If I'm doing a full point PPR, I'm probably taking Ridley here, just because that's an amazing start. Again, I can essentially go hero running back at that point. I got Bijan. I can go wide receivers with volume in St. Brown, Devonta, and Calvin Ridley. Running back, I think I can wait a little bit longer on that. We've already seen 5 quarterbacks go. If I miss out on Justin Fields or Justin Herbert, I have no issue streaming quarterback. I did literally all of last year in our fun little game, and I finished as like QB6 or something insane if I streamed all year. So I tend to be pretty good at picking those matchups. Not the end of the world to me if I don't get a top QB. Not a big TJ Hawkinson believer. I'm certainly not drafting him in the fourth with that pick. Scary Terry would be an amazing wide receiver 3 as well. Hop obviously has the upside. I just think for me, balancing out my team and getting somebody who I, again, think is going to get the guaranteed production, I would take somebody like Miles Sanders here. Just so Jack can cry too. He's not going 3 running backs that early either.
Oh, I was going to. I was already looking at what can I get that's not running back at the following pick. And I'm like, I feel good about this. I'll start these 3 just to see what my team looks like. So
nice.
When you said, yeah, I don't know if these 3 will make it back to you, I go, I guarantee Miles Sanders won't. So
I bet they won't.
It's one of those things where it's like, yes, I don't want to start 3 running backs in my first 4 picks, but with Kupp's baseline and consistency. And at that point, I'm just taking best player available. Like, don't let the draft force you into taking a position. If I get Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, and then Miles Sanders, all 3 guys should be 250 plus touch guys. I would feel so safe at running back. And then I would just spend like the next 5 rounds not touching running back and going all receiver and whatever else. So I really love that. I was shocked because I was expecting you to take your boy Herbert there just because, or the upside of Justin Fields. I think, is there a point where like, I mean, I know you liked Miles Sanders, we both do, but is there a point where like if you're on the clock there and you're just not in love with a lot of people, do you go quarterback because you don't love the other positions there, or do you just stick with like not being forced into taking a QB?
I mean, honestly, that's personal preference in my opinion. And again, I think I'm comfortable with streaming just because I've done it so long. I don't remember the last time I had an elite QB. I tend to wait until like the 6th, 7th rounds and grab one of those individuals. I've seen myself do that a lot. So I've had Justin Herbert a lot, and I've done a lot of drafts with them. So if you want that top tier guy, and especially after seeing how last year went, where streaming was honestly kind of difficult, and after those top 4 guys, it was a massive drop off. For me, you can be plenty comfortable taking Justin Fields or Justin Herbert there and just having that guaranteed production. If you're really not in love with the guys, I don't hate it. If you started, you're comfortable with how your first 3 rounds go. The opportunity cost being in the middle of a round here, it's not all of a sudden like you're at the tail end and you're going to have wide receivers and quarterbacks go at massive runs by the time it gets back to you. So if you want to take a quarterback right there, I think there's not enough picks that you're going to be completely depleted at running back or wide receiver that you'll be just fine a round later.
Yeah, totally fair. I get that. Well, after Tyler's pick, Kenneth Walker finally went, who I think at some point you got to take him. I think I probably would have said he's worth more than a mid-4th, even with a little bit of the injury, because he's probably going to be fine. It's just whether Charbonnet eats into it, so I get not wanting him as your running back too. Calvin Ridley goes, who might have been in consideration for me, but I also just talked about how I was down on him, so probably wouldn't be super on brand. for me, looking at the top of the draft options, we got 2 quarterbacks and a tight end. So it's kind of the same thing where it's just like, yeah, I don't love a lot of the other options here. I'm not a Dobbins fan right now because he's been injured for the past year plus now. McLaurin, I think he's a better
Hard, yeah.
receiver than fantasy necessarily. And I think Dotson, like you talked about previously, he's going to eat into that. I hate Damian Pierce at ADP for the record, everybody, just so you guys know. DeAndre Hopkins is the other one in consideration just because he's one of those where it's like he might be getting discounted because he's in a different system, but he's still a beast. So it's just, do I pair him and Cooper Kupp or do I go with one of these quarterbacks first? I'm very, very torn on what to do. I, like Tyler, believe in my ability to get a quarterback later and figure things out. So as much fun as Justin Fields would be to have, I mean, he was, I think from like week 6 to 15, I read he was a QB8 or better every single week. So it's not just the upside, but it was the consistency with the rushing. I think it'd be very, very fun to have him. But I think if you're a good enough drafter and you know enough of these like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round guys, that you can figure it out later. So based on that, it's going to push me away from quarterback just to see what happens. I was planning on trying something fun versus being balanced, but I think I'm just going to end up with a receiver here. And of the guys that are available, plus the ones that I think will make it back to me in the next pick, I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins as just the upside swing. Late 4th round pick. He's the receiver 4, 6, 20-ish or so off the board right now. So, I mean, at that ADP, I think he's worth the dart throw. I mean, I think he should be a wide receiver 20 at least, and he's going to have some big weeks too. So don't hate that after my running back room feels pretty safe, and I've got Cooper Kupp as basically a receiver and a half. So
Yeah.
Just going the old dudes that 2 years ago, this would have been a monster receiving lineup.
That is true. You look really good in 2019.
Unfortunately, both of the quarterbacks I was considering did not make it back to me, so that would have probably been my locked-in pick at the 5th at that point. Fields went, then McLaurin, then Hawkinson, who, again, I'm not even considering. Damian Pierce, good. These are the picks where it's like, great, get the guys out of the way that I didn't even want. Justin Herbert, I would have loved falling to me. DJ Moore, I'm not interested in at all, so that's fine. Coming back here, again, we have Dobbins. Probably not going to take him here. I don't feel great. It would be nice to have a third running back because I think they're going to disappear very quickly, but not enough for me to lock him in as my pick here. Kittle's in consideration as well as Pitts. I think if I was taking one here, I'd probably go Tyler's route and go Pitts just for the upside because the receiving options in San Fran scare me, but I don't know that I'm going to go with either of them. As far as the receiving options, I feel like Drake London's the one that has the second year boost or boom coming up. Jerry Jeudy's probably the one I'm in love with the most as far as talent. Christian Watson I'm down on just because we don't know what Jordan Love's going to look like. And Chris Godwin I like as a safe option. So I think I would take him more if I had some volatility in the wide receiver room, but it doesn't really get much safer than Cooper Kupp when he's healthy. So probably not really looking at him. Of all of them, I think I'm leaning Jerry Jeudy the most. And as I look down the list at like running backs and stuff, Cam Akers could be interesting. I'm not high on Madison. I like James Conner a lot, but he seems like a little bit of a reach for me to get, whereas I can figure out running back maybe later on. So for that reason, I am going to lock in Jerry Jeudy as kind of just like the third year explosive option, a guy that could, outperform his ADP here. Finally, J.K. Dobbins went. Drake London was the other one I was considering as well, just before Tyler, but I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted 2 Falcons on the team as well. So,
Correct. Yeah, I couldn't have gone Drake, couldn't have gone Kyle Pitts, which is unfortunate. Can't stack it up there. If I'm looking here and I'm in the mid 5th, if I look at some of these running back options, the Cam Akers is of the world, Mattinson, James Conner. Honestly, of those 3, I continue to hear that Sean McVay just loves Cam Akers, and they figured it all out, and everything's amazing. So that feels really good as my RB3. Mattinson, again, massive wide range of outcomes. James Conner, to me, is interesting as well. I find myself drafting him a lot, especially if I go in the 7th pick, if I get somebody like Breece Hall. Then I come back and I get somebody safe, in my opinion, like James Conner, because he's also catching passes. A lot of people don't feel like that. You don't think of James Conner as somebody with receiving prowess for whatever reason, just because he's a bruiser and gets the goal line work and scores a lot of touchdowns. He gets those 1 and 2 yard touchdowns. But he is a really good receiving back as well. So for that safety, I'll usually go James Conner if I'm seeing somebody like that. Wide receiver, I'm with you hard on Christian Watson. Don't really know what Jordan Love is going to look like. Godwin, I like for that safety aspect. Mike Williams, probably too boom or bust for me. Brandon Ayuk, I do love as well. Obviously, then you're getting into Hollywood Brown. If I'm looking at this and I'm looking at who is after me, and there's only one tight end here looking at this, I think Kittle, again, with Brock Purdy healthy and the way we saw them perform when they were on the field together, he was like tight end 1 or even tight end 2 at the tail end of the season when they both got on the same page. So I think knowing the rest of the options here, I'm good with 1 or 2 of those, whoever comes back to me. And I'm balanced enough. It doesn't matter if it's running back or wide receiver. I think I got to lock in one of those top positional advantages and go Kittle here.
Yeah, dude loved Brock Purdy. He was out there talking in the media about like, he's my quarterback. I don't care what anybody else says. Da da da. So, I'm assuming this is the case, but Jesus, really quick before we talk about who went
perfect. I called that perfectly. There goes the tight ends. I could feel it coming.
He's starting the run. That's what you want to do.
I could feel it.
I'm assuming I know the answer to this before we talk about who went off the board. If you had not gone Bijan in the first, would it have been Pitts over Kittle?
I think so. I think the upside for Pitts is pretty ridiculous. I think George Kittle is certainly undervalued. I think a 5th round is certainly great. We've seen what he can do. The trouble with that is, again, 1, the amount of mouths to feed in San Francisco, like we've talked about, and 2, his willingness as a blocker. Kyle Pitts is never going to be asked to block. That man is an athletic freak, and he's going to run so many more routes, which is an important piece. So routes run is so much more important than just kind of even general skill set. You can't catch the ball if you're blocking. Simple as that. George Kittle is the best blocking tight end in the NFL. And he loves it. He's an Iowa boy. He wants to pancake people. He loves it. He has fun with it. So for me, the upside of Pitts, simply because he's going to run so many more routes and has that athletic profile, not that George Kittle doesn't, that upside there is certainly just so ridiculously high that I would probably go Pitts over Kittle. But I think since I have somebody like Bijan on my team already, I'm not doubling up on Falcons, and that's why Kittle was the option.
Makes sense. Beyond Pitts, we had Christian Watson go, and then Chris Godwin. Love that value in the late 5th. Dallas Goedert goes next. Madison at the 5-6 turn, along with Trevor Lawrence, who is another quarterback I think could be very, very solid this year. Brandon Ayuk, one of Tyler's guys, goes off next. And we got a run of running backs here. Cam Akers, Dalvin Cook, who I obviously don't think will go quite this high until he's actually on a team. And then James Conner. To be honest, when you were deciding on Kittle at the last one, I was in my head thinking there's no way he doesn't take James Conner, because you've been high on him for the value. I almost took him instead of Jerry Jeudy. I just went wide receiver, more focused. So the fact that he almost made it back to you, I would have been super frustrated if you got that double value.
That would have been amazing. That would have been. I was really hoping, because he was down there, a few running backs, but then 4 running backs go in the 12 picks that it takes to get back to me. That was kind of brutal.
Yeah, once they started.
Oh man, yeah, 100% brutal. Because then now you look at the running backs in this area, you got a whole lot of what ifs. DeAndre Swift, potentially not even the one on his own team. Javonte, how slow are they going to bring him back along now that they have Samaje Perine? Rashad White, certainly going to be the bell cow. Lenny is gone, but now you've got Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask throwing you balls, and he was already extremely inefficient last year, but I do love him as well. Kamara, is he going to be suspended? Pacheco, I'm not trusting a Kansas City running back to do anything. See how quickly this fell off. And now we're down to our guys, David Montgomery and James Cook.
Right.
It's crazy how fast those fall off. So that's why no matter your format, you better have 2 running backs through that 5th, 6th round. Otherwise, it's going to start getting oogly,
yes,
very fast.
Agreed. And I feel like the first 4 rounds is a very, very similar, like mostly ADP. But once you get beyond this, like Tyler was just looking at, like there's 2 running backs down there that I think we would both probably take over the 4 or 5 that he mentioned above. Once you get to like round 5, 6 beyond, I think you start just reaching the half rounds for your guys. Like, I don't think there's, just because DeAndre Swift is 15 spots ahead, whatever it was for James Cook, I think I'm taking James Cook over him at this point, just because this is how I feel. And you don't have to like James Cook, but just based on how you're feeling about your people, that's where I would go. So I'll let you go back on, but kind of where are you thinking a position either way or either way? I know you've got pretty balanced right now with.
Yes, I was gonna say I'm pretty balanced,
both.
so I think I can go either way. When I'm looking at the individuals here, if I'm looking at wide receiver, again, Mike Williams, it could be a decent fall for him and a time to take him. We know Hollywood, but I don't need Jack to stab me twice in the same day, so I'm probably gonna pass on him.
He's probably gonna not make it to me anyway.
Right, that's true. Not a big Pittman believer. I think again, rookie quarterback JT. Their Pittman's only so good. Probably fine as my wide receiver three, but I'm much more inclined to trust like a Tyler Lockett and somebody like this, or certainly a Hollywood Brown over those two. Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson. I think certainly if I wanted either one of them right now, I think both of them are getting back to me just based on the ADP game.
Yep.
And then running back, I think very similarly, David Montgomery or a James Cook or potentially even a Rashad White, who I like probably more than the consensus, are getting back to me based on that. So I think for here, I'm going the perennial. This guy's been a top 19 wide receiver. He goes criminally undervalued all the time, and a wide receiver three. Even if he takes a step back now that JSN is in there, I think Geno Smith continues his efficiency. DK will get his. Lockett's going to get his. JSN, we'll see how that goes, but I think having the security of somebody like Tyler Lockett, I think is incredibly useful as your wide receiver three. So I'm going to go with Mr. Tyler Lockett and play the ADP game and hope one of the other ones get back to me that I want.
Yeah, love that pick. Especially based on your receiving core already. Like you got two young studs that are gonna probably be elite. So then having Tyler Lockett as that baseline, like I can still have great weeks, and I'm probably gonna get you 10 at least as my third option every week is really nice. So after him, Michael Pittman and DeAndre Swift go. No heartbreaks, which is nice because I wasn't interested in either of those guys. So at this point, my team is pretty balanced as well. I do have 3 receivers and 2 running backs. Keep in mind we do this with 2 flex. So there's one more position to fill versus trying to look for a starter. So I would probably round this out based on either my guy, Hollywood Brown, or kind of both of our guy, Darren Waller. So I am looking at probably one of those two and then seeing kind of what the ADP does from there. I will make my pick now for Marquise Brown because really quick, the only reason I'm basing it off of this is 2 out of the 3 teams in front of me have tight ends already. So the small chance that team 2 doesn't take Darren Waller is worth it for me. So I'm going to lock in Marquise Brown, and we'll see how this rounds out, and maybe we'll just do one more round here because nobody cares about the last picks anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it!
Oh my goodness, that was painful. That was painful.
I was like, I'm going to be the smartest man alive if this works out, but it's fine. I like Hollywood a lot more, and having him as my second flex and 4th receiver after I went running back heavy, I feel good. So Javonte Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, both also went 2 running backs I'm not super concerned about. Mike Williams, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, and Darren Waller. So it makes me very, very sad. So based on everybody who's left, like I said, I'm looking for either running back just to get my third option in there or one of the onesie twosies. Not in love with any of the tight ends anytime soon. And quarterbacks wise, Dak, Deshaun, I'm not interested in. I could probably wait until my next pick to look for like a Tua or an Anthony Richardson we talked about. So I'd love to get a running back here, top of the board. I don't love Rashad White as much as like you do necessarily. I think he's fine, but I don't see the upside necessarily, even if he is the one on that terrible offense. Kamara would be a nice home run swing here, just if he does pan out. But I think I'm going to go more for the safety and like one of my guys that I talked about earlier in David Montgomery. I think he could easily be a running back too, even if he splits time, and having him beyond the 2 that I've already gotten, Pollard and Najee, that feel very safe. He seems like a great flex, like sub in for one of these receivers. So that will be my pick.
Oh, things you love to see. When you do all this and you play the ADP game and your my guy gets all the way back to you in your 7th round, that's exactly who I to get to here, and it worked out perfectly for me to fall. All these receivers, I'm glad I have the 3 receivers. Deontay is certainly going to get the volume. Got to love that. But then it's a lot of ifs. JSN, Burks, Pickens, Addison, Dotson, that's a whole lot of ifs for me. So I would 100% come all the way down here and grab my guy, Mr. James Cook, and start loving my team.
Love that. I should have taken him instead of Montgomery. So rounding out the 7th here before we pause quick, all receivers, we had Burks, Kadarius Toney, Dotson, Pickens, and Deontay Johnson all go, and we will touch base on the 8th in a second. The rest of the 8th being pretty much all receiver with Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, and Deontay Johnson, 3 of the rookie wide receivers from last year, actually. So love Deontay Johnson late. I know he's kind of one of your guys too. We've talked about him a bunch, being underrated, but end of the 7th is absurd. Starting out the 8th, we got Jordan Addison, rookie from this year, along with JSN, a couple picks later, both rookie upside swings, Antonio Gibson, Zach Charbonnet, and Dak Prescott. So Any big disappointments or misses in those picks before you?
Not really. I felt pretty comfortable with the wide receivers I got. I mean, maybe if Deontay fell to me, just because, again, I think in any type of PPR league, the volume's going to be there. I mean, I think he was like fourth in the NFL in targets last year, and that was
Mm-hmm.
with a rookie Kenny Pickett. So if everybody thinks he's going to take the step forward that we think he's going to do, I think he could certainly do much better than a seventh round draft pick. And I don't even want to know what that is, wide receiver
Yeah. 35,
32.
40.
Yeah,
I
30,
don't
yeah,
know. Yeah.
exactly. So I think he'll certainly outperform that ADP. So I certainly wouldn't be mad at that in the seventh or the eighth round. But other than that, nothing too crazy. So some of those rookies, there's a lot of question marks with those receivers. So like I said, I've kind of went into it, and from some of the draft notes that I've made, I've essentially said I better have three wide receivers by the end of the seventh or eighth round, because
Well,
after that it gets really yucky really fast.
yep.
So coming into the eighth round here, I looked a little bit at who's there, and really this one isn't even a question for me, just based on who's there. I'm still not looking to go QB. I'm not worried
Oh,
about. I don't think Deshaun Watson is a huge upgrade over the other names that are here. Even your boy Tua is there. My guy Anthony Richardson is there. Uh, Running back wise, there's really only one true option for me, being AJ Dillon. Wide receiver wise, all these are kind of yucky or hit or miss for me. Brandon Cooks, who knows? Same Quentin Johnson, Gabe Davis, Michael Thomas. I think the most sure thing in this range is AJ Dillon by far. We know he's going to split the backfield with Aaron Jones, but even standalone in standard and PPR, he finished as running back 26. So, I mean, if you're going to get a running back in the eighth that can deliver you standalone flex value, and in this type of league where you're playing two flexes, he's somebody that's literally going to be a startable piece for you in the eighth. So, just looking at who's here, even other tight ends, obviously, I don't need that. And the wide receivers, I think the safest individual and obviously has the most upside if something were to happen to Aaron Jones, and also has standalone value, is 100% AJ Dillon here for me.
I like it. I like it a lot, especially with who knows what the Packers are going to look like this year. I mean, I know Aaron Jones is the guy, but they're definitely going through a rebuilding. So, I mean, we could see them kind of turn to AJ Dillon more a la, let's see what he's got before he's up on his rookie contract and go from there. So, Evan Ingram, the franchise guy we talked about before, just went for Team 6, even though I don't have a tight end still. You do, but I do not. Quentin Johnston would have been a nice little dart throw. We kind of talked about him previously in the eighth. He's looking better and better in camp, but probably wasn't a big focus for me. Already having 4 receivers through 7. So for me, as I mentioned before the last turn, I'm either looking for a standout quarterback, tight end, or just to get a third or a fourth running back, kind of load up on some more depth as value falls. So again, playing the draft a little bit. It didn't work out before when I missed out on Darren Waller. I'm still very upset about it. But looking ahead, all 3 teams in front of me have relatively early or elite quarterbacks. We got Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Justin Fields on teams 1 through 3. So although it says I should probably take Deshaun Watson, I would take Tua over him, just being my guy. I'm actually not going to do that because I don't expect I hope the sleeper bots don't make him take a backup quarterback, but I'm banking on him being there on my next round. So looking down further, I could go Freiermuth or Njoku. I like both of them there, but honestly, there's a couple of other flex players that interest me a bit more here. So I think I'm going to try to wait on tight end as well and see kind of how that shakes out. So pretty much all the same guys you mentioned. I'm really not interested in anybody at receiver here. Michael Thomas is like the biggest dart throw, but having 4 already, I don't really need to go and get any of these guys. Running backs wise, other than AJ Dillon, who you already mentioned and talked about, there's really like 2 guys that I'm the biggest or sold on that are here and are going to be gone before probably my next picks. So one would be Rashad Penny out of Philadelphia, just taking that home run swing. I know he's got DeAndre Swift to contend with, but they've been giving Penny the number 1 looks. They brought him in, or they didn't really bring anybody else in beyond Swift, and Penny has looked great when healthy. It literally just takes him being healthy, and he's like an RB1 on stats basis. So I've always been a big believer in him. Really, the only knock on him is health. Everything else has looked great. And then the other one we both kind of talked about a bunch, and I've drafted a ton of places, but Samaje Perine is out of Denver, just with the news of Javonte not knowing if he's going to be ready or not, or full speed. They brought Perine in to be the guy, like the fill-in up until Javonte is back, and I think they're going to take their time. So Perine, to me, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 15 option, like the first 4 weeks or so until Javonte gets back up to full speed. So very, very tempted on both of those. I think based on my running back room so far with three very, very safe options in Najee, Pollard, and David Montgomery, I'm more inclined to go with the home run swing. So I'm actually going to use my first pick here to take Rashad Penny, who's another one of my guys, just to lock that in. Feel really balanced. I've got 4 running backs, 4 receivers, all that feel very good at value. No quarterback or tight end yet, so I'm taking bench pieces at this point. But again, I feel confident I can figure it out later on. So
Holy wide receivers.
gamble worked out. Only receivers and running backs went, which I don't need either of them. But Gabe Davis, Zay Flowers, Juju, Michael Thomas, Brandon Cooks all went. Of that group, do you have a favorite at this value point or thought?
I mean, not really. I mean, there's certainly a realm where Juju is the number one in New England. I think he probably is that. I understand the hype around the Zay Flowers is of the world, but OBJ there, healthy Rashad Bateman if he's healthy. So I can see Zay being a great value there as well. Those would be my 2 in that range.
Yeah.
I don't know that I get Brandon Cooks was good at one point. I just don't know that we're going to see it like we talked about. McCarthy wants to slow it down, that entire offense. They don't want to run as many plays. That defense was gassed, even if they were incredibly good. So I think you're just going to see less plays out of them. I can see around where Brandon Cooks is good because he's a good player, but he was also good because he got volume everywhere he went. That is not going to happen with CD. That is not going to happen with a healthy Michael Gallup. There's a reason that Pollard is still there and they let Zeke go. They trust in him a lot as well. So of those 5, give me Juju or give me Zay.
Yep. I like that. I think Juju's probably the only one I'd even consider, just because that wouldn't be surprising to me if he catches 90 balls in New England, just because they have nobody else there. So, but yeah, didn't really want any of those guys. Brian Robinson, not even a thought. So my gamble worked out this time. I would love to already have Waller locked up and be getting my quarterback here as well, but at least I'm getting one of the positions. So it's between the top 5 ADP or quarterbacks and tight ends. So it worked out for me in terms of just like what fell to me for what I plan to need. So that's always fun. Again, I am going to go quarterback over tight end because I'm not really concerned about tight end at this point. So based on the 3 available, obviously we got your home run swing and Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson's, literally all 3 of these guys we talked about. One's my guy, one was your wild card, and one was your diamond in the rough. So, I mean, we've already said a lot of what we need to know about the 3 of them. Obviously, I am going my guy first, so I'm going to put Tua in there and just get the quarterback position locked in for me. So speaking of which, back-to-back tight ends go off the board between yours and mine. So Njoku and then Freiermuth. The back-to-back tight end for Team 6 has 2 tight ends now. So,
Interesting. And now, once again, I'm glad I have that position, and because it's going to start to get real ugly now. Your boy Dalton Schultz. I know he's it's either him or Chig. Take your pick. I guess he'd probably go Kincaid over all those individuals.
Maybe, yeah. Schultz is up there, yeah.
Yeah, he's up there. Again, he's him in Houston. I know everybody's hating on him. He's likely not going to be as good as he was in Dallas, but again, look at those wide receiver pieces. He's certainly one that I would take if I'm punting tight end again, because he's going to get a lot of the volume there. I think if you think about it from a rookie QB standpoint, what does a tight end become? A safety valve pretty darn quickly. And Dalton Schultz isn't an inline blocker. He's going to be, again, one running routes and have some of the highest number of route runs by tight ends. So you could do worse if you're punting the position than Schultz. For me specifically here, again, I still don't have a quarterback, and I feel like I don't plan on getting one anytime soon, just based on what's here.
You're passing on your boy.
I'm thinking about it because I'm looking at the rest here. There's everybody except for Team 10 has a QB behind me, and so if I'm just going bot-wise, they're going to take Deshaun Watson. If they get a backup already for the other individuals, then so be it. So if he's there in the 10th, I will certainly take him. That's kind of what I've said is by that. Because right here, exactly like we've talked about, I do have more running backs than I anticipated having here. But looking at some of these guys that are in this range, the Jamal Williams, if Kamara suspended, is certainly a great value here in the 9th, who's going to instantly have production. Samaje Perine is going to guarantee yourself probably 3 or 4 weeks of production. Khalil Herbert, not as sold on, but then you start looking at the wide receivers like we talked about. Cortland Sutton, Rashad Bateman, Jamison Williams, if you're willing to wait that. Elijah Moore, like that just sounds gross.
Gross.
When you compare them to then Jamal Williams and Samaje Perine. those again are going to be weekly staples in your lineup. Those wide receivers, very likely not. For me, I knowing what I have in AJ Dillon, James Cook, Miles Sanders, Bijan Robinson, I have a whole lot of safety there. So for me, I think is where in this realm, I'm probably taking the Jamal Williams swing because I feel like no matter what in New Orleans, he's going to be guaranteed that goal line. If I went more risky for some reason and I needed to guarantee myself production for that first quarter of the season, I'm taking P. Ryan. But since I think I have that safety and I can now put on my bench a Jamal Williams who can fall into the end zone 13 times again, he's somebody that I got to add here and hope and assume quarterback gets back to me just based on the teams that are in front of me. Pretty much already have their quarterback locked up. So allow me to click this button and cry here in a few seconds when that doesn't work for me.
Yep.
And I can see it in your face, Jack's like, this is not going to work for him at all.
I'm very worried for you. All right, first pick off the bat is Deshaun. There he goes. All right, well.
Oh, man. Why did 4 quarterbacks go there? That is insane. If somebody's taking Dak, I do not see them also taking Deshaun. I mean, regardless, it is what it is. It happened. It's an outcome. And then for them to go quarterback here and a quarterback here and a quarterback here, I was hoping if at least
Daniel
didn't go, that Daniel Jones was going to be there.
Yeah, he's the backup.
Well,
oofda.
Another year of Jared Goff for me.
Back-to-back Dak and Deshaun, and then back-to-back Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones.
That's crazy.
Probably not going to happen in your leagues, but, switch the teams around, and it's definitely feasible. Like
it is a range of outcomes, that is for sure. Bateman feels like too much of a dart throw coming back here. I have too many running backs here. Now I've got, 5 running backs? So I probably have to start looking at wide receivers. Again, tight ends I'm not terribly worried about. So I got 4 running backs to 3 wide receivers here. So coming back down and looking at these individuals, it's getting real thin, real fast. I really don't like any of them. My favorite of these that Jack has seen me draft a lot is Allen Lazard. I think just playing with Aaron Rodgers is going to be an immediate benefit to him. They have that history together. And Rodgers has been known to lean on that in times. He's really good at supporting a number 1 wide receiver. Allen Lazard is not going to be that in New York as Garrett Wilson is there. But sometimes that familiarity helps early in the season because, again, if I'm looking at other individuals in this range, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, Tyler Boyd, you know what you're going to get with those individuals. And I feel like Allen Lazard could potentially at least break out and be a wide receiver 2 from these working with Aaron Rodgers. OBJ, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole. I do like Jacoby Myers a lot as well. I think he could certainly suck up enough volume in a Jimmy Garoppolo offense, even behind Devontae Adams. So I think my pick is kind of between those 2. But just playing with Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm going to go with the Allen Lazard route, even though I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, at this point, it's just kind of dart throw, so I think it makes sense, the rationale. Having Allen Lazard followed by Rashad Bateman and Jacoby Myers, who you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. I liked Rashad Bateman, but before they brought in all these other receivers, so now I'd be totally out on him. For me, I am pretty resigned to going tight end here with 3 different options that I would consider: Dalton Schultz, Jake Okonkwo, and Dalton Kincaid. Okonkwo is out for me just because of DeAndre Hopkins, not only because he's on my team, but also because they brought him in, so I'm a lot less high on him now. But between Dalton Schultz and Dalton Kincaid, I'm probably more settled in on Kincaid just because I'm going for the dart throw. Schultz, I think, will be better than people expect. I think he will be a value return on ADP just because kind of the same type of thing where we were talking with a couple of other guys. There's just nobody else really there. It's kind of like he's like a Waller Jr. almost, where it's like, well, he's probably going to lead the team in targets or be close to it. So I don't hate that there. I'm just willing to take the home run swing. And like I said earlier when I was talking about him, if Kincaid looks rough for a few weeks, you can cut him halfway through the season and find somebody else for your playoff run. Like, it's not a big deal to me. Had I not basically been locked into tight end at this point, the other couple I would be looking at, Devin Achane is interesting in Miami because if he can beat out the other 2 old veteran backs there, Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, that offense is very, very scary. Again, probably wouldn't be looking at him because I just took Tua a second ago, but he is a nice deep late round sleeper kind of thing. And then Elijah Mitchell, I've actually talked about as kind of like a late my guy for me that I've drafted a lot of places just because at this point, like you're looking for paths to be league winners or relevancy. He's the clear handcuff behind CMC, who has a huge injury history. So, I mean, if you're taking a dart throw and maybe you're like doing the zero RB method, like getting some of those backups, I think Elijah Mitchell is probably one of the best handcuffs you can get because he's behind a top running back who also gets hurt a lot. So I would look at those two. For me, I'll get Kincaid locked in and see what happens here, but some other spots to think of. So beyond that, Dalton Schultz goes immediately. Then Aaron Rodgers, not bad value in the 10th there. A-Chain, as I talked about. Chig and Komet go right after, so starting that tight end run made me feel good. Gino in the 11th, I was talking about him as a value. Diamond in the rough too. Like, yeah, the fact that even as you were talking about, those 4 quarterbacks went off the board after your pick, to still have Rodgers and then Gino at the 10-11 turn, like you can get quarterbacks late. There's a reason where both of us basically have waited. Like I waited until the 9th round to take one. Tyler's still waiting. Like there's a ton of quarterbacks this year that are very close. So curious where he's going to go here. I'm looking ahead now. My entire lineup is finally filled for starters at least, and I've got a couple of bench guys. I'm pretty balanced. I've got a quarterback, a tight end, 4 running backs, and 4 receivers. So not really needing to go one way or the other. I would probably just look at best player available. Again, running backs, it's probably Elijah Mitchell or Kendre Miller for me. Just another kind of rookie dart throw shot to see what happens. I like Devin Singletary too, just because I'm not a Dameon Pierce believer. As far as receivers, I really don't like anybody that's here, so I'm glad I've got 4. I might wait another round or 2 and see if there's anybody later on that is a decent dart throw. Honestly, in our normal draft, this is probably where I would go double dip just to secure Kyler Murray about a full round ahead of time, just because I think he's going to climb. I'm not going to do that here because it doesn't really make sense for the viewers here and the ADP projection, but that is probably what I would do at this point, either the 11th or the 12th round, just getting him to lock it in. But because I don't love anybody else here, I am going to go just kind of a stash guy on my bench, and I'm going to go Elijah Mitchell just because I think I can find a couple of wide receivers at the end of the draft shortly. So after that, we got Russell Wilson, also another quarterback that has a bounce back plan and isn't the end of the world if you ended up with him as your quarterback either. He comes off the board, and then finally OBJ goes up before Tyler.
Yeah. So if you're getting to this point, you can obviously see what happens with quarterback. But if you look at the options specifically, exactly like we've talked about, if you leave your draft with Jared Goff, just take a quick look at where he finished last year. As everything comes down here.
He was like your Mr. Streamer last year, too.
QB10. He finished QB10. He was going to undrafted. I get it. You look at the other ones, too. But the volume that you get in this Detroit offense, and, they added Jahmyr Gibbs, who's literally one of the most transcendent pass catchers from the running back position that has ever been drafted in the NFL. I don't think they're now going to turn around and run the ball a whole lot more. They're going to let Jared Goff sling it. And that defense is still not great. So they're going to continue to play in a lot of shootout games. So I have no issue right here with coming out of this draft with Jared Goff as my starter. And if he doesn't work out, again, exactly like we talked about before, similarly to Anthony Richardson, since I missed out on him, this is where if he came back to me, I'm double dipping. I'm just going Jared Goff and I'm going Kyler Murray, and I'm good. And I feel good for the rest of the season. So at the sake of missing another quarterback, because I continue to wait, I'll make sure I at least lock up one so I can have a starter and then see what happens from here.
And the nice part, team context-wise, is you complete the Jared Goff Amon-Ra stack, which I'm a big stacks guy, so that's very nice.
Yeah, it works incredibly well in PPR.
All right, so after that, we had Jerick McKinnon, Tyler Algier both go. Sky Moore and Tyler Boyd, Greg Dulcich, Raheem Mostert, Bryce Young, the next quarterback off the board, Kendre Miller, as I talked about, Adam Thielen, and Tank Bigsby. So we're back on the clock with you.
So looking here into the 12th, after I got Goff and looking at some of the individuals that are here, if I was maybe short on another running back or wanted to go that route, certainly Singletary is the name that you're looking at here, especially if you're like Jack and I and you're really not a Dameon Pierce believer. I think he's, if nothing else, at least going to get enough work to be likely flex relevant compared to any of the other names in here that feel more like dart throws. Darnell Mooney of the world, Donta Foreman. He's they've said he's splitting first team reps with Khalil Herbert, so that'll be interesting to see if that progresses. Obviously, that is a good dart throw there for you. But all these wide receivers are going to be true dart throws. Rookie wide receivers, Mingo, Rondell Moore, Rashee Rice, all these individuals. So for me, like we've talked about, if I get to this and I'm punting QB, I'm just locking it up and knowing I'm good for the rest of the season. So I'm going to go back to back, and I'm going to go Jared Goff and then Kyler here. And then I know for the whole season, I really don't even have to worry about streaming for the rest of the time. So give me some Kyler Murray, and Jack stabs daggers through me with his eyes.
You suck. Devin Singletary goes, so I don't even get to take him. Stupid thing. No, in a real draft, I would have gone Kyler over Elijah, but it felt like it would have been like a round and a half reach. Like even you were taking him like 8-9 spots above ADP. So while I expect him to go up, wherever he ends up, unless like a report comes out and says, oh, he's going to be ready by week 1 and his ADP goes back to QB1 status, wherever he ends up, if he's in the ADP of the 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th, I'd still take him like a half a round to a round ahead just to secure that, because he's going to be more proven than most of these guys at this point. So beyond that, I mean, I'm not even looking at tight end anymore. So I'm basically just either like backup quarterback, who pretty much nobody else on the list interests me except for maybe Carr. Like if I had a questionable guy, if I had like the Anthony Richardson path, Carr seems like a very safe one with the Saints this year that I don't hate. But I guess at this point I'm just rolling with Tua only as one quarterback, and I'll just stream as needed. So not even looking at those. I'm pretty much just running back or receiver the rest of the way. Jonathan Mingo maybe for Carolina. I don't know how I really feel about him. Rondale Moore's off the table with having Hollywood Brown already. Rashee Rice is interesting because every year we try to all project who the Chiefs' number 1 receiver is going to be, and it's just Travis Kelce. So if it happened to be him, it would be very interesting. Going further down, there's a few other options. I'm not really in love with most of these, so I guess I will take the player that I'm going to pick, which I'm going to take Jonathan Mingo just as the dart throw, because him and CJ Stroud him and Bryce Young might develop some kind of a rapport, and I'm not really in love with Thielen or DJ Chark there. So again, just bench filler. I'm not really in love with any of these guys here, but Roshan Johnson, Rashee Rice, Deonta Foreman, Rondale Moore, Zeke, who currently doesn't have a team, so you likely won't even go here until he's signed. And then Nico Collins, who I don't hate, out of Houston as well. So coming back around here, it's a lot of tight ends at the top of the board and not a ton of other guys I'm interested in. Maybe at running back, I would look Jalen Warren just because I'm the Najee owner, but I'm probably not going to use my 6th running back spot just to roster a backup for my own guy. I mean, I've got enough other fill-ins that'll be better than Jalen Warren, even if he was the one. So not really looking at a whole lot of other running backs here. Jeff Wilson, I'm not big on just because I like A-Chain long-term. Tyjae Spears is basically the same boat as Jalen Warren, where he's backing up Derrick Henry. And then after that, it's nobody's. So I'm pretty much looking wide receivers here. Michael Gallup does not interest me very much at all. Again, like we've talked about with Brandon Cooks and the issues with Dallas's passing attack. So really it comes down between Zay Jones and Romeo Doubs for me. Zay we've already covered. Doubs is just the dart throw, and if he becomes Jordan Love's go-to target, like reports out of camp have been. Honestly, I'm going to go Zay Jones because I like the value better, but also because Tyler took Kyler Murray. So there we go.
Yeah, that was pretty much how that had to go, which is totally fair. So obviously that would have been my pick. Either him or Doug's would have been my pick, because my running back room is solid. My wide receiver room is iffy after my top 3, but again, I have a solid top 3. So I don't hate that. The rest of these are just depth and hoping individuals hit. If I'm looking in this range truly, and again, I'm really only looking at wide receiver at this point, you look at some of these names, you don't feel great about pretty much anybody. But again, realize that we're also in the 12th, 13th, 14th round for a reason. For me, the pick is Michael Gallup. And the reason for that is I think now that he is healthy, they have enough draft capital invested into him. I understand they went out and got Brandon Cooks, but I am very curious to see what he does with a full healthy season. I think he has incredible athleticism. CD can't catch every single ball. but he's obviously going to catch plenty of them. But if I'm comparing Michael Gallup to the rest of this, I think he has the closest path to relevancy. DJ Chark, again with a rookie quarterback. Rashid Shaheed he had flashes at the end of last season, but you're never going to know when to play him. He's a big play guy. Jalen Hyatt is just a burner. Again, you never really know. Jack with his Van Jefferson, I certainly understand that he's not going to go Van probably now with Cooper Kupp, but again, the path to relevancy is there. Alec Pierce, KJ Osborne, maybe Jaden Reed, and then you're down into a few of these individuals. I do like DPJ a lot as well. He's been one of my guys that I've gotten a lot, but I just think Michael Gallup and his pure athleticism and skill set among these wide receivers is the most likely to hit, in my opinion. So he would be my pick here. Just looking at these terrible wide receivers at this point.
Yeah. I actually like him over Brandon Cooks, like especially at value in ADP, but Gallup's a year and a half removed from his injury where he missed like an entire season. So I don't hate that potential. Running back out here, there goes all the other irrelevant tight ends. Sam Laporte out of Detroit, Matt Stafford, quarterback, Johnson, Gerald Everett, Mayer, and Hill all go as tight ends. We had Jalen Warren go, who probably would have been my last round pick. Jeff Wilson, Tim Patrick's not going to get drafted, and then Tyjae Spears. So we got Tyler back on the clock.
Yeah, and so this would be a last pick because we have kickers in our league. So for our specific ones, usually these last few rounds are kickers and defense. Our league specifically, we voted to get rid of defenses. So we're all offense all the time, baby. So kicker will be the 15th round, so I won't worry about that right here. Although it would be super fun to just say, hey, give me some Justin Tucker because, I mean, he's just as good, but it happens every year with kickers. If you get one of these top 5, 6, just stream. It doesn't really matter. What I like to do really when I'm looking at these individuals, I'm like, if you want to look at projected points and average, I'm really just looking to find a kicker from elite offenses. So if you really want to do it around early, I'm not going to complain at this point. If you want to have a stud kicker that you don't have to worry about the rest of the year, go for it. For the sake of this, I'm not going to worry about it. Obviously, I don't need a QB. But if I'm looking at individuals here at the tail end of it, I'm not really. I know what I'm getting from DJ Tark. He's not going to be a difference maker. Rashid Shaheed, again, is going to be a hit or miss. When I'm here, I'm likely going to get somebody like a Jerome Ford or somebody like that, where if the top guy goes down, I think there's an immediate path to relevancy. So that would be my guy here. Is I'm probably going last complete dart throw, who is probably going to be a cut candidate, but just in case something happens from the time you draft or early in the season, you got somebody at the tail end of your bench. So give me somebody like a Jerome Ford who could have some standalone value simply because Kareem Hunt is gone. Chubb can't get every single thing, and Kareem Hunt had standalone value. So if Jerome Ford takes that passing down work, maybe he slides into flex consideration, but maybe not.
All right, so after Jerome Ford, we got Jordan Love, late round quarterback, going off the board here. Could be something in Green Bay. We never know. Clyde Edwards-Helaire went next. I was actually considering him just as, again, another dart throw of apparently they've been having reports that he's been practicing with the ones in Kansas City. So, I mean, if there's a chance, we never know with a late round pick. Beyond that, I don't really know that I'm in love with anybody. I've got a pretty balanced team with 5 running backs and 6 receivers. So don't have anybody that I feel like I need to take here. I guess I would probably just go with Van Jefferson as my late round value guy normally, but with Cooper Kupp, not in love with that. So Rashid Shaheed's in consideration. I don't know if you have any strong takes on him, but kind of all comes down to whether Michael Thomas plays or not.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't mind the pick. I certainly, you hear good things out of camp from him. My only trouble with him is, again, how consistent is he going to be, and especially now with Michael Thomas apparently back to 100% healthy. Where's that volume going to come from, and is it going to be consistent enough for you to feel like you can start him?
Right.
Best ball, great, absolutely love it at the tail end of the draft, but for kind of redraft and weekly consideration, I just don't know that he sees enough volume. And if he does, great, you're going to be able to likely find him on the waiver wire, but I just don't see that path with Olave there and Michael Thomas back fully healthy. He's going to run as the 3. I don't think there's any question about that. I just don't know that he sees consistent enough volume. if I'm looking tail end here, I'm probably going DJ Chark just because, again, we really don't know what that pecking order is in Carolina. Adam Thielen, going to get his potentially DJ Chark there, Jonathan Mingo. You really don't know. So DJ Chark has just as good of an opportunity to become a favorite target of a rookie QB as anybody else. So
Right.
you know he's not going to be the one. You know he's not going to be the two. DJ Chark could be. He could be the one. He could be the two. So I just think that potential would have me leaning that way. Because again, I think Jalen Hyatt similarly. He's not going to be the one. He's not going to be the two. Sterling Shepard's still there. Wandell Robinson, if he's healthy, is going to get some of his as well. So I think if I'm looking receiver, that's probably my path to relevancy. Alec Pierce, I don't know that I can go with Indy. KJ Osborne could be another one as well. You know he's going to be the three. So I don't know. It's all iffy at this point, but
Yeah.
lean Chark likely because of that. If I need a receiver.
And I probably would have too, but I just took Mingo a couple rounds ago. So at this point, Chark is probably the best pick. Same kind of things like you said for the reasons I passed by, not looking at Jefferson because of Cup. Jaden Reed and KJ Osborne don't interest me as much. John Mechie kind of does at this point as a bounce back for the Texans, who, speaking of wide open receiver rooms, I don't hate them. And then with news the last couple of days, Marvin Mims, a little bit farther down at 189. Is an interesting one, but same situation. I have Judy, so I'm not going to do that. So
that's right.
I'm going to roll, long story short, with John Mechie just as another dart throw on a terrible team that has wide open receiving cores and just see what happens. So as expected, Rashid Shaheed goes next, Chuba Hubbard, Derek Carr, Justin Tucker, Evan McPherson, Dylan Carlson. As you can see, we didn't go kicker no matter what until the last round because there's no point. If we had defenses in here too, we would have done them the last two. It doesn't matter if you get the number one option. Justin Tucker is great, but at the end of the day, it's pretty insignificant. So give me a dart throw on a guy that might turn into a flex thing or a trade target instead. So based on this, it really doesn't matter at all to me. So I'm going to go just with the guy that finished higher last year with Tyler Bass out of Buffalo, just because they score a lot of points. But again, pick your favorite team, pick a team that you believe is going to have a high year on offense that's just going to score a lot and go from there.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And which is why, for me, I'd go somebody. There's a lot of interesting names here, honestly. I mean, Jason Sanders finished incredibly well last year. It's an incredible offense in Miami and kicking in good weather all year, pretty much. Brandon McManus, we think has a massive leg, but he also played a whole career in Denver. And I love the Jacksonville offense as well. So either one of those two would be my pick. But since I have a little bit of Denver blood in me, I've typically just gone Brandon McManus just because. And if that's not who I want at the start of the season, then I'll pick somebody else.
Yeah, fair enough. I would assume the rest will be kickers here as we round out the draft. And yeah, that's it. Perfect. All right. So really quick before closing that out, if you want to just go to like each of our teams just so we can show people stuff. I don't know if you want to each talk about our own team or if you want us to each give
go ahead. You can start with
opinions on the other person's team. Cool. Well, looking at my full roster here. Is there? Oh, I guess, yeah, that works better for ADP wise. So you can kind of see I went back and forth like bobbed and weaved. So starting receiver early and then went running back to back and then 3 receivers and then 2 running backs. So I really kind of like felt good about being able to keep my team balanced while filling up the positions well. I went much more balanced than I thought. I thought I was going to end up starting like running backs in rounds 2 through 4 and then really have to go heavy receiver, but loved getting like 2 of my guys that I really like, David Montgomery and Rashad Penny in the 7th and 8th rounds. That was really big for me, falling value. Pretty much did exactly what I said I was going to do at quarterback and tight end as well. So it was basically just tons of loading up on the flex plays, which is ideally what I would like to do going in. I feel like anytime you take a quarterback or a tight end early, it really shakes stuff up and you feel the depth later on somewhere. So I feel very good about that. I think my 2 running backs are locked in, and I think beyond Cup, I have 3 shots of guys that all could be like low wide receiver ones. So I'm sure at least one of them will be solid and the other 2 can just kind of fill in as flex. But having Montgomery and Penny on my bench feels very, very nice because, again, in this league, which is 2 flexes, I think you're going to have a lot of options week to week and several startable guys. Going 8 of those guys and then still getting Tua, I feel good there. And then really the last 4 rounds don't matter, but at least I get to pick guys that have a path to becoming the ones. And if it's clear that they're not, I just cut bait on them and pick somebody else up. So,
Yep.
any thoughts on mine?
No, I like it. Like you said, I'm impressed at the balance as well, and kind of followed that plan that you got through. So having essentially through 7 rounds, having 4 wide receivers and 3 running backs, and those running backs are solid. You know, Pollard's going to get his. You know, Najee's going to get theirs. Cooper Kupp as an automatic 1.5 wide receiver, like we talked about, and then some individuals who have the opportunity to just be massively good if things go their way. Tua is great at the end of that tier. Tight end is obviously the only thing that's going to be a big dart throw for you. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Obviously, it's the opportunity cost of not going tight end middle to early. So if it doesn't work out, great. Stream it for the rest. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would change, I mean, things knowing what 2020 hindsight, is that I probably would have gone Darren Waller over Hollywood Brown at that,
Yes.
6th pick. That was just a point of like, I love my guy. I want him. So I'm going to go and get him. Also, Darren Waller went earlier than he had been going ADP wise. He's usually been slipping into like the mid to late 7th. So I thought I had plenty of time, but didn't work out. But if I could have done Darren Waller and then either gone, like one of the receivers that was available or still gotten Montgomery the following pick anyways, I still would have felt pretty good. My receivers at that point, I would have already had 3. So it's not like Hollywood was a necessity.
Yeah.
So that'd probably be like the one thing I would go back and change, but otherwise felt pretty good. And Kincaid is as good of a shot as any at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. I'll let you go on yours. Yeah.
Flipping over to mine. I mean, I got my boy. I got Bijan. You can't hate that. And again, started getting that absolutely solidified, and then 2 solid wide receivers. Literally, Devonta could finish as the number 1 receiver on his team. That's in the range of outcomes. I still think AJ Brown will do that, but obviously Devonta showed how good he can be. So right away, I got 3 players who we know is going to have consistent volume. Miles Sanders, same way. There's nothing really going on there in Carolina. If he gets all of that work and pure workhorse, you got to feel great about that. Kittle really was kind of that last tier. If I didn't have Bijan, I would have went Pitts. But Kittle just gives me, again, a positional advantage, and especially if he continues that rapport with Brock Purdy, I think I'm going to love that. Getting Tyler Lockett as my wide receiver 3, a perennial top 20 option. We'll see if he even takes a little bit of a step back. But even if so, if he finishes 24 to wide receiver 30, that still outperforms what I'm getting him at an ADP. Got my boy James Cook, A.J. Dillon. Those are 2. James Cook would be in my second flex. But so then I get to put A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams on my bench. I really love my running back depth there. My biggest change is obviously in round 10, I should have went QB over somebody like Alan Lazard when my big thing was I don't have enough receivers. But at that point, none of them, if I look at who else went in that range, Elijah Moore, Cortland Sutton, Rashad Bateman, Jacoby Myers, I likely should have solidified my QB and gotten a higher tier option, like who would have been a Daniel Jones there probably, or gone with that probably would have been it. Probably would have been Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
That might get, or I mean, I think Anthony Richardson went just before that. So maybe I could have foregone Jamal Williams and went that, but I think I like the Jamal Williams pick a little bit better. But maybe if I would have went QB 1 round earlier, I would have felt more comfortable with Daniel Jones rather than having to waste another pick on a QB. But I really don't hate having both Jared Goff and Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And then dart throws from there. The last couple with Gallup and Ford. So I kind of liked it. I don't think there's any big misses that I had. I think the biggest thing will probably be my wide receiver depth if somebody gets hurt. But other than that, not too many complaints. What do you think?
Yeah, no, agreed. I was just going to say the depth piece maybe. Initially, I was going to say beyond your top 2, like with it being 2 flexes, I was going to say I was a little bit concerned about your like additional running backs, but the fact that you went like 3 in a row kind of solidified that, where I'm not as high on A.J. Dillon, but I think James Cook should end up being at worst a 24 overall running back, and Jamal Williams has the chance to fill in that as well. So between the 3 of them, I think you've got at least 1 really solid backup, probably 2. Yeah. So that kind of took care of that. And then same thing with receivers. I maybe like my receivers a little bit more just because I went more earlier. But I think the fact that you have 3 very clear, like locked in top 20, 2 of them that are top 10 options, I'm not as worried. If you get hurt with one of them, maybe you have to start running backs as both your flexes, that would be the only thing that comes into play. But like you went tight end early, and like my tight end situation is bad, so that was kind of the trade off. You either got tight end or you got a little bit more depth, and I think it paid off the same way. I ended up liking your quarterback situation more than mine, even though I went early just because of that Kyler piece. Like I think Kyler makes it where you're guaranteed to have a QB top 10 QB situation. I should with Tua, but it's a question mark, and like it would be nice to have that backup. So based on that, that pretty much solidified it. That's the thing though, is if you wait on quarterback and somebody else has the same idea to take Kyler or get like the guy that you're targeting, then you're really, really screwed. It makes sense if it pans out, but if it doesn't, then you're stuck. So
Yeah, exactly. So think about it in the context exactly like you said, the opportunity cost for tight end. If I don't go George Kittle, I likely go somebody like a Chris Godwin or Brandon Ayuk. All of a sudden, now my wide receivers look amazing, especially if Tyler Lockett gets back to me as well. So that's what it is. And then if I can figure out tight end from there, or you're willing to stream it, great. I tried in this route to say, hey, I want that positional advantage of somebody like George Kittle who can turn into a top 3 or top 4 tight end just with the skills that he has, and we've obviously seen it before, and the amount of touchdowns that he scores can certainly be there. So if I forego Kittle and I get another wide receiver like Godwin or Ayuk, all of a sudden my running backs look great and the rest falls into the same place. Wide receivers look great and I just stream a tight end. So if that's the route that you are more comfortable with, go for it. Tight end's hard to find. So I thought I could figure out wide receiver a little bit more than I could tight end later. But I don't hate the route if you go it. So I just tried it this round, and I likely, in my own opinion, probably should have gone wide receiver looking at it a little bit more. And I think I would have liked my team a little bit better if I would have done that, because I feel like tight end, again, I could get an Evan Ingram. I could get an Njoku a little bit later and still feel just as comfortable. But I tried with positional advantage and worked out this way this time.
Yep. Hypothetically, if you like flip flop that, technically you could have taken Darren Waller at your sixth round pick instead of Lockett. Would you feel better now how it is with like Kittle Lockett as your 5-6, or if you had like say Godwin or Ayuk and then Waller as your 5-6?
I think I probably would have felt better with Godwin or Ayuk and Waller looking at it now. Because, again, I see the path for Waller to literally lead the team in receptions. Obviously, there's a reason he was my guy. So I likely should have, again, went wide receiver there. And I feel like I would have liked my team a little bit better with a Godwin or Ayuk and been able to still get Waller in that next round instead of Lockett.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, just curious. It's always 2020, but
yeah,
I think that's the key. We talked about it as we went. Like it's all about getting like a couple of the running back and wide receivers before it falls off. It seems like running back you need like 2 in the first 4 or 5, and wide receivers I think you said you need like 3 in the first 6. So it's just you got like some wiggle room beyond that where you want to take one QB or one tight end early, but you can't really take both, and you can't really take 4 of one and leave the other one flailing. So it's all about balance.
Yep. It was fun to be able to get to the first mock out of the way, and we'll have a few more episodes starting more frequently. We'll go a couple weeks out likely, so it's fun to get back. Training camps are back. Hard Knocks starts next week, so I think everybody's excited and starting to feel that NFL is coming back, and should be fun. So appreciate everybody as always. Excited to see what people think of our teams and continue listening. Shoot us your thoughts. If you have your guys, send them our way in comments, whatever you want to do. So football's back, baby. Peace out, Pow Squad.